Good evening, everybody. Welcome to North Somerset Live Q&A with 4 of our executive councillors from North Somerset Council. My name is Mike Bell. I'm the leader of North Somerset Council and a councillor in Weston-super-Mare, and I'll invite my colleagues to introduce themselves and tell you what their portfolio responsibilities are. But before I do that, just to remind you, we're streaming live on lots of different social media channels tonight. If you want to put in a comment, then please do, and we can try and get through as many questions as we can over the next hour. And hopefully we'll cover as many as we can. So first off, if you could introduce yourself, Hannah.
Thanks, Mike. My name's Hannah Young and I'm the Executive Lead for Highways and Transport.
Thank you. And Annemieke?
Thank you, Mike. I'm Annemieke Waite and I'm the Executive Member for Climate, Waste and Sustainability.
Thank you. And Roger?
Yep, I'm Roger Whitfield. I'm the Executive Member for Adult Services and Stronger Communities and a Portishead Councillor.
Lovely. And we've got 4 executive members with us tonight. The total executive is 9, so there are some other colleagues with portfolio responsibilities who aren't here this evening, but we'll try and cover as many as we can. We've got representatives of different parties from across North Somerset. So hopefully we'll be able to cover as much as we can. So whilst we're waiting for some first questions to arrive, I thought it would be useful if, Hannah, you could just say something about where we are with the BSIP programme, the Bus Service Improvement Plan programme, and particularly what we've been talking about in the last few days around a bit of a pause and a review process.
Certainly, thanks, Mike. So I think lots and lots of people will be aware of our bus service improvement programme, often known as BSIP. It's a very broad programme, and I think what a lot of people see of it is the works on bus lanes that have been taking place along a number of our roads. Actually, it's a much broader piece of work. We put together a plan back in 2021 to 22 around how we could recover bus services after COVID, which was then funded by the government, and that includes things like the reductions in fare packages. And what that means is, you know, for a long time now, it only costs £2 to get a single ticket on a bus, wherever you're going, largely across North Somerset and the west of England. We've also had a whole range of activities to try to improve people's experience of buses. We've worked with drivers to try to do that. And there's lots of work that's happened around new routes, routes that used to be in place that we've managed to bring back, things like the X5 and the X10 and the Western Town service. So BSIP's a very wide programme. One of the things that has obviously been very prominent in recent months has been the work particularly around the A370, the A369 and the top of the A38 to put bus lanes in some of the key congestion points where buses get delayed. And where buses get delayed, of course, it causes problems for reliability, which is one of the things that matters most. People tell us about choosing to take the bus. So we know that that's been quite disruptive for our communities, and we've received lots and lots of questions about how effective have those things been, and some concerns about the further schemes and projects that we've got within that programme. So over the last few weeks, we've been looking at that and listening to the feedback. And what we've decided to do is take a bit of a pause in the programme and take the time to monitor the schemes that have been delivered already. There's been some new guidance also from the Department for Transport for us to look at. That just came out in March around bus priority. So we're going to be going through that, thinking about whether we've got exactly the right approach. And we won't be delivering any more schemes just at the moment, apart from the one that's currently going on at Wood Hill and is due to finish in August. And we won't be starting any new works until at least November. And we'll be coming back to council with some decision points around what we'll do as a result of the review. So I hope that gives a bit of an update for people. Obviously happy to take more specific questions.
That's great. Thanks, Hannah. Really helpful, a bit of scene setting there. And I can see that we've got our first few questions coming in. So the first question is from Chris Rogers. So Chris has asked, what is the council going to do about the situation at Abbotsleigh with routes allotments? So if anyone's not aware of the situation, there's a development going on to set up what are effectively commercial allotments in the Abbotsleigh area. There's been some dispute, I think, and disagreement locally about the merits of it and particularly the planning status of it. The development has got consent, permitted development rights it's called, and it's deemed to be appropriate in that location and in keeping with the existing agricultural uses of that land. But I know there are concerns, which I'm sure is what Chris is referring to, about whether the operations that are happening there already are consistent with that consent. What I can say is that the council's enforcement team are very much keeping a close eye on the situation at the allotment site, working with the parish councils and local councillors to monitor the situation, and will be having continued dialogue with routes about what is appropriate and allowed within the consents that they've got at the moment. And if enforcement action is justified, it'll absolutely be taken. I don't know if there's anything you want to add on that, Annemieke, because obviously it's nearer your neck of the woods.
Really, just to say that I'm aware that there's been a very recent problem with a lot of compost having been delivered, and I know that that has been reported to the council, but that I think at the moment the planning team are saying that that is not against the planning that was allowed for that site. But they are seeking further clarification from routes regarding the use, and so I think it's a little bit of a watch this space and see what happens, but they are looking into it.
Thanks very much. And we also had a question from Sally Besant, which was a similar issue. So hopefully, Sally, you feel that we've covered that with that answer, because it's the same issue around the routes allotments. Okay, so the next question is from Benjamin Daniels, and this is about the consultation that we've got going on around car parking charges at the moment. So I'll ask you to address this in a second, Hannah. But Ben is asking, want assurance around the plans for parking charges, and if you if there is a campaign of resistance, will we overturn it? And describes it slightly emotively as an immoral and destructive scheme. So Hannah, do you want to address that and perhaps just say something about where we are with the parking consultation more generally?
Sure. Yeah. So we are out to consultation at the moment. We have had that running for a number of weeks through a survey online, and also we've been having days out across the communities that are likely to be affected by potential car parking charges in Clevedon, in Portishead. We've got Nailsea coming up next week. It was Yatton today. So there's opportunities to drop in. And also we've had information in libraries and forms to fill in there. So we're really, really keen to get as many views as possible. And I appreciate there are a number of petitions running and people, you know, have some strong views on this. I've asked, where I'm aware those petitions are taking place, that those are shared with the council once the consultation is closed. And what we're then going to be doing is looking at all the feedback that we've received. There's a working group actually of 23 councillors from all political parties who are going to be involved in looking at what comes back from that consultation, and we'll be taking back to the executive in due course through our normal process. I appreciate that this is something that people feel very strongly about. One of the difficulties that we have is that the council has a very, like many councils across the country, is in a very difficult financial situation. We have very significant savings to make over the coming years because of consistent drops in our funding from national government and increases in our demand. So parking is a service, it's a cost to us, and we do need to be careful that we balance our budget. So we'll be looking at all the community feedback, but we do also need to understand how we can make the figures work so that we can balance our budget at the end of the day, because otherwise we'd be having to look at other council services and think about how they might be affected by our financial situation going forward. So no decisions have yet been taken. I think it's been a really useful process to hear particularly how people use local parking, and I've spoken a lot to businesses, particularly in recent days, and to people who use leisure areas. So, we will be looking very closely at what that means and making decisions in due course.
Thank you, Hannah, and I'm sure we'll get other questions on the parking consultation during the course of the evening and implications for some of the towns. So we may well come back to this subject. So the next question I'm going to take is from Nigel Brown, which is about the Banksy artwork, although apparently not. We're going to do broccoli, it says. So that's fine. We'll go back to broccoli. Don't worry. We've got several questions on broccoli. So Nigel's question is about, are we spending funding for improvements for the sake of it? And can you explain the benefits of the developments at Broccoli A370? But we have got several other questions about Broccoli, and are we going to reverse the scheme? What's gone wrong with it? References to the recent accident and so on. So Hannah, over to you again, I'm afraid. Where are we with Broccoli and the issues there?
Okay, so on Broccoli specifically, the scheme is not yet fully complete, and I know that we've had lots of comments on Facebook and elsewhere about people seeing that drivers are not using the bus lane currently. One of the reasons for that is that we still have some changes to make to the traffic light setup, and once those final changes have been made, buses will be able to trigger the signal in the traffic lights when they're in the bus lane so that they can move past traffic at times of congestion. And I know I've had lots of questions too about how does that work with the right turn. The signals are intelligent signals, and what they will do is enable buses that are coming up to the traffic lights, Bristol bound, the A3, for example, bus that goes off to the airport, to trigger the signals in such a way that it hold the traffic back temporarily to allow that bus to go faster to the airport past the congestion, as well as the X1 direct into Bristol. That change has not yet been made. We're expecting it to be done by the end of next week, and at that point it will make a lot more sense for the buses to be using the bus lane, and then we'll be able to start to monitor the speed improvements that the buses achieve through that junction. I know there have also been questions about was the bus lane wide enough? The bus lane is wide enough. It has been checked by First Bus. We're not required to get it checked by First Bus, but they very helpfully last week came out and had a look at it for us. Very happy. There was a small change that had to be made to the signs to be able to make sure that buses could use it, but it's all been signed off, and it's all good, good for usage. So there's no reason that buses can't use it. At the moment, it doesn't have the benefit that it will do after the end of next week when the new traffic light changes come into effect. I think you also mentioned the accident, Mike. So there was an accident last Friday. We were in touch with the police to understand what had happened, and the police have reviewed dashcam footage not just for us, but as part of their normal process. The police have issued a statement which says that actually the accident that took place was not at the junction, it was further along, and it was not related to the changes at the junction. So although I know there are a lot of rumours circulating about that, we've had police advice that it was not to do with the junction, and it was nothing that we would need to do further at this stage to be able to do anything to address that.
That's great, Hannah. Thanks very much. And we will now go to Nigel's other question, which was about the Banksy artwork in Weston. So what Nigel's saying is that the council seems to have paid £50,000 to carry out repairs to a Banksy artwork that's not public property. Where is it now? So I'm I'm pleased to say that the premise of the question is in fact wrong. So the Banksy artwork, the pinwheel, is on display in Western Museum and is now in the guardianship of Weston-super-Mare Town Council in the museum. The artwork has been stored since the Banksy Dismaland exhibition very nearly a decade ago, and some repairs have been carried out to it in order for it to be put on display and installed into Western Museum. That work was fully funded by a cultural development grant from the UK government. Around £20,000, so a £50,000 grant was awarded by government. About £20,000 of that has been spent on the refurbishment, storage and then installation of the artwork in the museum, and the remaining 30,000 is now with Weston-super-Mare Town Council for future maintenance and support of the facility. So I think it was really great that the artwork has been made available for public display in Weston-super-Mare as a long-term legacy of the Dismaland exhibition that Banksy put on all those years ago. So a really big success story, and I know it's proving very popular in Western Museum. Okay, the next question I'm going to take is from Hugh James, who's asked, it was great to see new residents moving into the Marina Gardens development in Portishead. What is North Somerset Council doing to build more housing, especially affordable housing at social rent? So I'm happy to say something about that, but I wonder whether, Roger, you wanted to say something first about how we're also working to provide a different mix of accommodation, particularly to help meet long-term care needs.
Yes, certainly. I know. We talk about development of houses and properties an awful lot, don't we? And we talk about the mix, and we go out and we look around North Somerset to see what it is that is needed by people in North Somerset, and often it's small properties for people starting up, but there's also the social housing that is very much needed, and then there's housing for people with disabilities, or housing that can be altered. So every time we look at doing a development, or a developer comes along to do a development, we have a request that they put in a mix of different houses. And social housing, I think, was it about our standard ask, was it 38.5%, something like that, of the housing they put in is to be social, 20% on brownfield sites. So social housing is there, housing for people with disabilities is there, housing for first-time buyers, it's there. It's all in the mix, and we're trying to get the balance right for the people of Portishead. Sorry, the people of North Somerset.
Absolutely, and we've got a number of projects that are coming forward at the moment on council-owned land. So we've got developments at Parklands in Weston-super-Mare, Uplands, which is a real gold standard environmentally positive development in Nailsea, as well as the work that Roger was talking about in Portishead. Through the local plan, we'll be looking to deliver even more affordable housing for residents across North Somerset. But there's still a lot more to do, because we all recognise that many people are stuck, of course, in private rented accommodation of varied quality. So it's really important that the government gets on with it and delivers its renters' rights legislation, which is going through Parliament at the moment, to strengthen the rights for private renters. And we're working very closely with Alliance Homes and other social landlords to try and improve the availability of social housing as well. And you can look forward to hearing more news about schemes that we'll be driving forward over the next few years, specifically around social housing too. We're really keen to do more and make sure that we meet the needs of the community. Okay, I'm going to now take a question from Well, actually, we'll go back to the routes one because we've got a few questions on routes, and seems like a good question, which is from Chris Rogers, who's asking, does North Somerset have any rules about the hours that quantities of agricultural machinery is used in close proximity to houses? And then specifically reports that routes were delivering compost very early in the morning. And I guess that's a good question because it's two strands to that, isn't there? Firstly, you know, what's acceptable when it's associated with developments, and then secondly, what can we do about it? So generally speaking, when developments are given planning permission, there will be restrictions around hours of use and hours that work can be undertaken. It's slightly complicated in the routes development case because they don't have planning permission per se, because it's been given us a certificate recognising that it's ancillary to agricultural use. But that said, obviously, all the normal rules about environmental disruption and noise nuisance and so on do still apply. So we would expect to hear complaints from residents if that was happening, and we absolutely can take action to enforce against that. So please do report anything that you hear or see on that site that you're concerned about, because the more information and the more evidence that our teams and particularly our planning team have got, the greater the likelihood that we can take action if it's outside of what is an acceptable operations. Okay, I've got a question from Dawn Phillips, which is related to broccoli, but not about broccoli. So that's, when are we going to repair the damage to the lanes around the broccoli area that have been affected by the diversions when the work was taking place? But also, I know there's been concerns about increased traffic use of some of the lanes as a result of the changes at Broccoli. So perhaps comment on that specifically, Hannah, but also maybe generally about where we are on highway work.
Yeah, so specifically, there are some pieces of work, particularly around the verges, but the lanes we often hear are a difficulty around that area, and certainly I will be looking at the programme going forward for what we can do there to help. Generally speaking, around maintenance, it is a really challenging picture. I think, you know, many people will know we've got a lot more traffic on our roads. It's increased 9% in just the last few years, and we see increasing traffic on our roads all the time, and it causes a great difficulty for us in keeping roads up to the level of maintenance. We've also got substantial pressures from increased extreme weather events. Over the last 18 months, we've seen massively increased rain on our roads, so we know that they're deteriorating a lot more quickly. And much more heavy vehicles. Electric vehicles are increasing, which is great, but they're heavier on our roads, and so they deteriorate more quickly. And sadly, I have to say, we've got a £50 million backlog of road repairs to do, and nationally a £16 billion gap in funding to actually get our roads back to what they need to be. So we're repairing around 21,000 potholes a year. That's not specifically related to the lanes, obviously, but what we do in North Somerset is try and balance the monies that we get from government for roads maintenance. We don't spend it all on potholes. We try and balance with maintenance of roads that are deteriorating, because it's much more efficient to mend things before they get really, really bad. That's still a challenge for us, and each year we have a maintenance programme which we're just looking to share in the coming weeks, actually, so that people can see what's on the programme for the next 12 to 18 months, and we'll do the best that we can to be able to make that money go as far as we can. North Somerset's actually regarded as an efficient council in roads maintenance. We have a lower cost per pothole than many others. In many authorities, the average nationally is £50 per pothole to fill. We do it at a level much lower than that, between £26 and £30 per pothole, and that means we also get additional funding from the government, which is called an incentive fund, which means if we're really efficient at doing this stuff, we get some more money to be able to do more of it. So I would have to come back with greater clarity for the people living around Nailsea and Chelvey and Broccoli around the specifics of work still to be done around that area, but it is within the context of quite a big challenge around increasing road use, increasing problems in maintaining roads, and unfortunately a decreasing amount of money to do it.
Thanks very much, Hannah. Really helpful. So next I'm going to take the question from Trev Lloyd, who's asking about, are we still bringing in parking permits on Stanley Road and Grove, that's in Weston-super-Mare, and have we considered the impact on Ashcombe Road residents who already suffer limited parking? So as the ward councillor for that area, Trev will know that we have consulted on bringing in a residents parking zone scheme for a wide area in central Weston as a pilot. We're still working on that with the intent of introducing a scheme in this financial year. But I can say that the message was heard loud and clear from Ashcombe and Stanley Road residents that they did not want the residents parking scheme in those areas. So we won't be bringing it forward for Stanley Road, Stanley Grove and Ashcombe Road. But we will be looking to introduce it in other areas. And that actually also answers the question from Kelly Jones in George Street, which is a bit further over, who also talked of the parking pressures in George Street and the potential for residents parking. So absolutely, we will be looking to introduce residents parking scheme in George Street in this financial year. It may not be the perfect solution to everything, and it's very much a pilot model to see if it works. But we've absolutely heard the message that residents do want some parking solutions that might help to manage parking pressures in Weston Town Centre, and it's obviously a model that potentially we can use in other parts of the district in support of our wider parking strategy. Okay, what shall we go with next? So I've got a question from Jackie Hammond, which is, what is the council doing to deal with the youths causing issues around Sainsbury's? So would anyone like to volunteer to have a go at this? Otherwise I will. Obviously, we know that there are ongoing issues with antisocial behaviour in a number of areas across North Somerset. The North Somerset Council does fund a community safety team to work with the police to try and tackle antisocial behaviour, and we try to do that in three ways principally. So firstly, it's about working with the community, schools, church groups, youth organisations to try and find positive things for a community to do and operate that might provide a better outlet for the energies of young people. Secondly, we obviously try to implement increased patrols in the area, so that's both through the police community support officers and our community safety team. And then thirdly, we can introduce public space protection orders, which just give enhanced powers to the police and some of our enforcement officers to issue fines and take action if there are persistent antisocial behaviours. So I know that the local councillors have been involved and active in trying to find solutions around Sainsbury's. So I hope that does give you some reassurance, Jackie, that we're absolutely aware of and on it. But sometimes there are no easy solutions and quick fixes to these challenges. So I think you'll just have to bear with us as we try and find a way through that. Okie dokie, let's have a look. Christopher Jackson says, so I was putting the counterpoint, which is, please could North Somerset Council stick to its original plans regarding active travel and the bus service improvement plan and not U-turn in response to social media criticism. It costs money to reverse such plans. Another question for you, Hannah, but I think this is a good point about the consequences of U-turns, and there's been a few other questions saying, can't you just reverse this? Can't you just stop the work in Congresbury and so on? How did we get where we are with bus service improvement plan, and realistically, what are our options going forward?
Okay, so that's a big question, Mike, isn't it? How do we get where we? So I think I talked at the beginning about the fact that the bus service improvement plan is a much bigger piece of work than just the installation of bus lanes. That's huge, of course, and it's really a set of different things to try to build the bus service that's reliable and efficient and that people want and need. They tell us they need it. And so while I know many people at the moment are saying, why have you put these bus lanes in? We don't have the buses that run down them and so on. Actually, the council, through the government grant that it's had, has been funding additional buses on the X1 service, on the X4 service, on other services across North Somerset. And in fact, for example, on the A370, that corridor that has been the subject of so many questions, that costs at the moment almost £750,000 a year in council subsidies, which come direct from a government grant, connected to the work to then make the whole road more efficient for buses. And that comes from the government's Bus Back Better strategy, which was put together after COVID, to help us save the bus service both nationally and locally. And some people will remember that actually in 2022, masses of bus services were just cut across North Somerset, and we got huge concern from communities that had happened. And as an authority, we risk that if we can't create a more efficient and reliable bus service that people want to use, then actually that's going to happen again at the end of the government grant that we've got, which currently ends in 2025 to 26, unless we get to certain levels of performance with our buses so that they're commercially viable, that won't happen. So the reason we're taking a pause now is, and I say pause because we're looking at what we've done with the first few lanes. We're not saying we're scrapping the programme, but we do need to make sure that the measures that we're taking work, delivering the benefits that we expected, and that we're learning any lessons both in terms of the design of the schemes and in terms of the way in which the schemes are delivered, so that as we go through the next stages of the programme, we can determine in the remaining schemes, are they going to have a benefit? Do we go ahead with them or not? If we do go ahead with them, are we doing them in the best way and in accordance with the national guidance? And we certainly will not be at this point in time unpicking any schemes, because the next phase with the ones that have been delivered is to make sure that we have monitored, evaluated and understood the impact on the buses. We already have some early data that the Long Ashton bus lane has had an improvement on the bus times using that lane, and that has a really positive benefit for the bus companies. And what that means is they then can help us to improve the services that we achieve across North Somerset. So we are pausing, we are reviewing, we're checking that what we do is effective, and we're learning for the future. So it's not a case of just ripping up the book and starting again. We're going to take a measured approach, and we'll be announcing further plans in due course.
Thanks very much, Hannah. And I know it's a really complex issue and a lot of projects and a lot of moving parts. So really helpful to give a bit of a sense of where we're at the moment. And I just want to underline that despite what people might think, and certainly if we did, as the questioner suggested, make all our decisions based on social media comments, we are absolutely listening and reading and hearing what people are saying, both at face-to-face meetings, through our contacts as councillors, and on social media and in the media. And that is precisely why, as Hannah says, we're taking the time to sense check where we've got to and to review the programme. And nobody is in the business, despite what it might appear, nobody is in the business of trying to make life worse for everybody. We are trying to do the right things in the right way, in the long-term interests of North Somerset. So please do keep comments and questions and concerns coming in through your councillors, because that's the best way to influence what happens in the long term. Okay, So I've got a question about from Carmen Fisher, which is about access to NHS dentists. And Carmen's talking particularly about access to dentistry in Weston-super-Mare, where a lot of the NHS dentists have gone private and access is really, really difficult. What is the council doing regarding this? And I think this is something that all of us would agree is a real concern, and not just in Weston, but across North Somerset. There has been a real issue with the state of NHS dentistry, both in terms of the availability of practices and appointments, but also the stability of dentists in and around our area. So we've all experienced problems. I've literally in the last few weeks had major dental issues, and it's been an absolute nightmare trying to get even an emergency appointment for treatment. So we all absolutely recognise this. Dentistry is run obviously by the NHS. The council doesn't fund or deliver any of those services, but what we have been doing is absolutely lobbying NHS, our local MPs and the government to do more. We've asked for emergency funding to come into North Somerset to support dental provision, for the local NHS to do more to support recruitment and retention of NHS dentists locally. We are absolutely up for helping any NHS dentists that want to come and operate in North Somerset, if we can, in terms of accommodation, finding premises and so on, anything that we can do to support that. We do have a really good public health team that are also supporting getting NHS dental nurses into schools to try and provide support for early years and for children, because obviously we know getting people started on the right footing when they're young is so important. But there is essentially an NHS dental crisis, and it's going to require government action to fix it. But all I can say is we're on the case, and I think all of us across North Somerset would agree and share the concern and frustration that you've got, Carmen. Okay, so I had a question in before we started, which was from Robert, and that was asking about the consultation that we're running on 3 weekly black bin collections, and where this idea has come from, and isn't this just another council plot to make life hard for people? So what's the background, what's the driver around that consultation, Annemieke?
Thank you for that question. So we've done quite a lot of research into what actually goes into our black bins here in North Somerset over the last year or so. And it turns out that on average, and I have to say it is an average, on average, about 45% of we find in our black bins is stuff that could have been recycled. If it stays in the black bin, it gets into a landfill situation, which is not what we want to do. If there are things in black bins that can be recycled, obviously we want them to be recycled or reused rather than ending up in landfill, because you know landfill is very expensive, costs us a lot of money, but it's also really not good for the environment. Now, we've looked into that, and that percentage is really not something that makes us happy. So we spend about £5 million every year to dispose of the black bin rubbish. And if 45% of that could have been recycled, you can see very quickly that that would be a considerable saving to the council and would actually be better for our environment as well. So we have a consultation out at the moment that wants to find out what residents think about whether or not they could go from 2 weekly black bin collections to a 3 weekly black bin collection. We understand that that's not going to be easy for everyone, and that is why we are asking for people's opinions and for their experiences with that. So it's not just that we're saying we would consider going to 3 weekly collections, because at the same time we're also going to then make it easier for people to recycle the things that perhaps they currently find difficult to recycle. So at the same time as potentially introducing that, we would also want to introduce the ability to recycle all your soft plastics through your normal recycling collections, which is something we can't do at the moment because we've not yet been set up to be able to do that. And in fact, we're no different in that respect to any other council. So the suggestion therefore is that we'll make it on the one hand easier for people to recycle other items such as their soft plastics, while at the same time then reducing the black bin collections to 3 weekly. And we hope very much that that will actually make it easier for people to not have their black bin quite as full. Now, we completely understand that that doesn't work for everybody. There are people who have specific needs for actually a much bigger bin. There are some households where they have hygiene waste that they need to get rid of. There are some people who have very large families for whom something like this just wouldn't work. And then we have people who live in apartments, in apartment blocks or in flats, and they might not have room, for somewhere where they would put all their waste. So that's exactly why we're doing this consultation, so that we can find out what people's views are, and also find out what makes it hard for them to recycle and to reduce what goes into that black bin, but also to find out whether they think themselves that this is something that they could consider if we make things easier. So we've been really overwhelmed by the responses so far. We've at the last count, and that was last week, we had more than 8,000 responses from residents about their views on this, which is the biggest consultation response we've ever had in North Somerset, which I think is really encouraging. And we've also had really positive feedback from people saying that they particularly liked the consultation. They liked the introduction explanation of, telling people why this is what we want to do and why we're asking the questions in the first place. So I would urge anyone to complete the questionnaire if they can and if they haven't already done it, because it really is important to us that if we are going to make a change to the collection of black bins, that it is something that suits people, and also because it then gives us an idea of where in certain places we might need to make adjustments to people's collection scheme. I hope that answers it in full. Mike, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that sounds very good. Thanks, Annemieke, and just echo what you say. Please engage with the consultation. Give your feedback, because particularly those unique circumstances that some people are facing, it's really helpful to understand those so that we know what, if any, measures are the right ones to take. Okay, I've got a question from Emily, which is the council planning to do anything to stop development on the Slade Road site in Portishead? I think that's one for you, Roger, isn't it?
It's certainly my area, yes. So I think so. And we've got good news on that site, because it's been taken out of the development plan, and it's in the process of being handed over to Portishead Town Council to develop it as a community space. We in that part of the town in particular, we have very few community spaces, open spaces. I mean, we've got the wonderful lake grounds, but that area, it feels like one that's almost been forgotten for a while. And I know the residents were very, very keen for that not to be developed and for it to become part of the leisure infrastructure that we have within Portishead. And I'm really pleased to say that that my colleagues on the executive supported that, and I think you will see in the next 12 months some things being done on that site to get it into a usable condition, so that the community can then go on and enjoy it. We've been speaking to a number of the groups around Portishead, ecological groups, just making sure that everybody's opinion is taken into account, and then we will as a town council, we will be making the changes on that site. So watch this space, but it's really good news.
Good. Thank you very much, Roger. So there are a couple of questions. So Karen Thomas and Hannah Ruby have both asked about if there are any plans to do any work around safe routes to schools on the B343, or is it 440? I can't remember, near Davan Caravans. So that's the road into Weston-super-Mare from the dual carriageway by St George's. as many kids walk to school that way, but it's obviously a very busy and dangerous road. Are you aware of anything, or is that one you can take away to consider, Hannah?
I'm going to have to take that specific one away, but clearly safe routes to schools are something that we do invest funds in from our highways scheme. So really, what I'd be really keen to know is whether that one is already in the pipeline with a request. If it's not, we'll make sure it's considered. We do have a limited pot of money. These things are really important for us to do, but we get many requests from across North Somerset. At the moment, we've got over 1,000 requests for different adjustments to our highway network from wards and parish councillors and from communities. So it's quite a tough job to make sure that we've got the right ones in the programme each year. But I'm really glad that you've raised the specific one today. I'll go away and check whether it's already in our pipeline and where it is in the process. And if not, hopefully your local ward councillor can help in putting that forward for you so that we can assess whether it's one we can take forward.
Thank you, Hannah. Good question. And now we've got a question from the excellently named Old Man, who wants to know, what can the council do to help resolve the Hutton Main Road closure and the proposed duration of 18 months? So anyone local to Hutton Village will know that following the flooding and rains that we had, a part of a couple of private gardens have effectively collapsed into Hutton Main Road, causing effectively partial closure of the main road through the village. This is a really tricky issue because obviously the land in question is privately owned. So there are issues around getting the landowners to take action and of course their insurance companies. What I can say is that our officers are very much aware of the issues, working closely with the parish council and with the ward councillors to try and find solutions. They're meeting again with the landowners to put pressure on to progress a solution as quickly as possible. And what we have agreed is that if they are not able to set out a plan of action, then we will consider using our powers to undertake the work and then subsequently bill the landowners. So we very much understand the issues and are working to try and tackle that as quickly as possible. I've got a question from Chris Rogers, which is why do, and it flows from the parking and bin collection consultation that we're doing, why do North Somerset surveys always ask questions with options that presuppose that people support the scheme? The recent parking consultation was not the first. Why is there not an option to disagree with this proposal? Hannah, Anamika, do you want to say something about why we didn't ask that question specifically and whether you think there is flexibility in the surveys to respond in that way?
I'm happy to come in on that, Mike. I mean, what the council does often is put forward proposals. So what we're saying is, you know, we'd like to do this, and one of the ways in which we're consulting is to understand what impact that would have on people, so that we can understand whether we can take that proposal forward. Often in that consultation, it's, you know, we have to balance a number of different factors when we're putting forward suggestions for the way that we might change things that are happening. And that means actually, although it's really important to hear people's views, this isn't a referendum on whether we go forward or not. It's primarily the council is trying to gather information and data about, if it were to go ahead with proposals in a particular area, what impact would that have on you as a resident, on a local business? And one of the things about the parking consultation is in car parks where we already charge people, we have quite a lot of data about how they're used. We know how long cars stay there. We know how full they are. But in areas where we don't charge for parking, we actually don't necessarily know, is it residents who are using those car parks? Is it shoppers? Are the car parks seeing regular churn so that the local businesses can benefit, or are spaces being occupied for 2 or 3 days at a time? And so one of the things that we're doing in those consultations is trying to find more information so that at the point when we look at proposals, more defined proposals, we can try to do the best job we can so that we're not disadvantaging residents. I mentioned before, there are a lot of constraints on the council about both financially, but also, we want to look at how we can help people to look to use other forms of travel where they can, and those are things that we've also explored in the survey. So I appreciate people's frustrations. We have included all the way through the parking survey free text boxes, and I've been really strongly encouraging people, if the questions don't ask what you want them to ask, just say whatever you want in the free text boxes, and we have committed that we will analyse that information. We will take note of it, and I fully recognise it's very, very clear that many people across North Somerset do not want to pay for parking. I get that. When something's free, if we ask people, do you want to pay for it? They're probably going to say no. But we didn't come forward with those proposals because, we just thought it was a bright idea. We're juggling a lot of different things, and we have a difficult financial situation. So we're trying to find the option that best meets the very difficult challenges that we face. So please fill in the free text boxes if you don't feel that you can say what you want in other ways, but we're really grateful for people who respond to the consultation.
Thank you, Hannah. And I would just add as well that the formal consultation is not the only way that you can engage with things. You can always contact your local councillors. You can always contact members of the council's executive. So, genuinely, we do want to hear your views. And the only way we can make good decisions is if we have strong feedback and engagement from residents across the district. Okay, we've got 8 minutes left, so I'm going to try and power through a few other questions. So Martin Hardy asks about the former Woodspring pub on Well High Street and what's happening, because it's been empty for a while and is showing signs of vandalism. I'm happy to take that up with our planning and enforcement team, Martin, and find out what's happening with the landowners and what their intentions are. The council can issue notices where privately owned property is not being maintained or looked after. So if there isn't a plan of action, I'll certainly encourage that sort of action in respect of that, because it's really important that these landmark community buildings are kept in active use. Nigel and Carmen have both asked about bathing water quality in Weston-super-Mare and asking about signage and what's being done to tackle sewage and poor quality. So firstly, can I say there absolutely is signage on Western Seafront advising about water quality. We have a dynamic information system with the Environment Agency in Weston. So that's updated regularly according to the very latest situation, sometimes hour to hour, because it varies a lot. And we are working very closely with the Environment Agency and other partners to try and find the causes of the poor water quality in Weston and what is impacting that. Annemieke, do you want to say something more about that? Because I know you've been engaged with the Environment Agency.
I have, yes. So first of all, to say that I have very recently, in fact, last week, joined the local focus group that works on the quality of bathing water in Weston-super-Mare. Mike felt that it would be good for me to be on that group because climate and waste and sustainability is obviously my portfolio. So I was really pleased to join the first meeting just a couple of days ago. And it was with staff from the Environment Agency and people from Wessex Water, people from North Somerset Council. It's obviously very early days for me to be a member of that group, but I can absolutely assure you that I will do my very best to make sure that we all work together to make sure that the bathing water in Weston-super-Mare becomes better than it is at the moment. I don't think any of us want to see signs that say that the quality of the water is not good enough for anyone to go bathing. We have beautiful beaches and we want them to be used by everybody. And so at the moment, yes, it's really disappointing that the quality is not as good as we want it to be. But we're doing a lot of work to try and improve that. And we're working very closely, as I say, with the Environment Agency and with Wessex Water to investigate what the causes of this situation is and to try and rectify it.
Great stuff. Thank you, Anamika. What's the latest with, I've lost the name now, so sorry. What's the latest with Peer-to-Peer Way, Hannah?
Great news! It's going to be open very, very soon. We've been talking about this summer, and I can say that it's very close. I don't think we're announcing a date yet, but I am anticipating it in the very, very near future.
Thank you very much. Great stuff. Levelling up. So levelling up funding for Burnbeck Pier. Can we guarantee that it will always be for public use? And Tom asks, is there an option for a bus or train or tram station to link it? So, I mean, firstly, absolutely, the intent is that the levelling up funding, the National Lottery funding and the partnership funding with the RNLI and Historic England that we've secured for Burnbeck Pier, the absolute goal is to reopen it for public access. So both the pier itself, the island, and the lifeboat station. So absolutely, that's the plan. That's why we're doing it. And in terms of looking at transport links, absolutely right, Tom. Once the pier is refurbished, it will be really important to have good links between the town centre, the Burnbeck area, and the rest of the wider seafront. Previous private owners of Burnbeck have had ideas about tram systems and also about bringing back across Bristol Channel ferry services. So we'll absolutely be looking at all of those options as the project evolves and seeing what we can do to strengthen those opportunities. Okay, I've got a question. I'm doing terribly for losing who's asked the question. I can remember the question and can't find the name. So Simon Burgess says the government told all councils to stop charging for building waste at recycling centres to help stop fly tipping. Why are North Somerset still charging? Anamika?
I'm not aware of that being a national legislation, so I'm slightly confused by that, but I'm very willing to look into that and find out for you if you don't mind. I'm very happy to get back to you with an answer on that.
Thanks, Anamika. I think it's worth checking. I think that the government did consult on banning DIY waste charges, but I don't think they actually introduced the legislation.
I don't think they did.
Haven't done so yet, so I think that'll be the reason. But we could certainly look into that. Absolutely. What else have we got? Parking permits, we've covered that one. I'm going to go back to Brockley. Hannah, you'll be delighted in our last 2 minutes because we've got lots more questions on Brockley, and I don't think people are satisfied. So the first thing I'm going to say is we've got the message. You don't get it and don't understand what's happened at Brockley. But 2 questions perhaps you can address. One question was, how much does it cost? And the second question is, what are we doing to tackle the issue, particularly of the tailbacks that seem to be caused when cars are held at the lights turning right on the way to Bristol Airport, and that seems to be causing tailbacks, and the current design doesn't enable access. So what about that one? Okay, so 2 things. The costs are within budget. We obviously haven't had the totally final ones at this stage because we're still doing works on the lights. The original budget, and this is in the public domain as part of the bus service improvement plan papers, was 2.2 million. But I would say that actually a lot of the works that we've been doing in Brockley have been around the very, very poor drainage that has been in place over the course of very many years. And so one of the reasons that the Brockley scheme took so long is that there are a number of different levels of structure that needed to be rectified underneath the road there, and a lot of drainage works have taken place. So please bear in mind that cost figure was not just associated with putting in a bus lane, it was about fixing a whole load of other issues at the same time. In terms of the section in the middle of the road, when the traffic light, the intelligent traffic light is working properly, what will happen is the cars that go into the middle of the road into that sort of area to turn right
will start to go through. They can the lights control them going into that area, and then they can cross the traffic. But there will be intelligent detection, which means that once that fills up, it will affect the lighting phases. So we are expecting that will not cause a tailback once the lights are working effectively. I probably haven't explained that as well as I could, because it's quite hard without the diagram in front of you. What I can say is that I can't see all the comments here today, but we will take some of the questions that have come up today, and we're in the process anyway of answering a lot of questions from people who've come back to me already with questions about that junction. We'll create an FAQs so that if there are any confusions about how that's working now and how it's going to work once the lights are working effectively, I can explain that obviously through an FAQ that we can make available more generally.
Great stuff. Thank you, Hannah. Right, and we're 1 minute over, but I'm going to attempt a quick instant response to a few of the questions that we haven't been able to cover. So there was a question about parking charges for NHS staff at Western Hospital. We have expressed concern about that as a council. It's an NHS decision, but we're absolutely asking questions about that and trying to work with the hospital to come up with a better parking plan and transport and access plan for hospital staff and visitors. Oh gosh. The chief executive of the combined authority is going to get a lot of money. You're right. We are not members of the West of England combined authority. So obviously we're not involved in the decisions that the combined authority makes, but you're right. The new chief exec is on a pretty good pay packet. If you've got concerns about that, you need to take it up with the combined authority. Robert asks about parking permits being removed for staff at Wallace Scott School. I don't know about that issue, so I'll have to take that away and look into that and find out what the background is. I know that we have previously had an arrangement where there was some tolerated parking, but I'm happy to look at that again, because that's absolutely in my ward. There was a question about rewilding and whether we've got the balance right around rewilding and concerns about the Queensway. Again, I'll take that away and talk to the relevant officers about whether we have got the right balance. And what I would say is we've done some really good work through one of our policy and scrutiny panels to look at our approach to weed management, particularly, because I think there's some confusion that in some places what we've got is poorly managed weeds. It's not deliberate rewilding, it's poorly managed weeds, and we haven't always got the balance right. But I'll make sure that we take a look at Queensway specifically. Bus lane near Morrison's. This is a regular question, Hannah. So again, let's take that one away and look at it. That the bus lane's been in there for a long time by Morrison's in Weston with no buses in it. So it either needs to stay and get a bus in it, or it needs to be removed because it doesn't make sense. And I'm going to take one more, which was, why are dogs restricted on the beaches for 6 or so months and then allowed? Well, I mean, it's about trying to strike a compromise. So when the beaches are very busy during the summer, we don't allow dogs in the main part of the beach. But then we have less restrictions the rest of the year. And what I can say is that the feedback we've had and the scientific analysis we've had about bathing water quality is that the principal issue is not dogs. So if it was, we would have absolutely taken action to further restrict dogs on the beach. Right, there you go. We've run over by 4 minutes. Thank you very much. We've done our best to get through as many questions as possible. I really appreciate everyone's time and engagement. We do these regularly, so please do encourage people to come along, whether we have annoyed you or not, or satisfied you or not. We've done our best to get through as many as possible. And I would just reiterate, all the councillors across North Somerset are always happy to hear feedback, suggestions, questions. And if you don't get a response from a councillor or from your local councillor, then feel free to contact me direct and I'll try and get it sorted out for you. Thank you to my colleagues, Roger, Annamika and Hannah, and for the staff that have supported us this evening. Good night and good luck.
Thank you.